What's up, guys? James here with another episode of That's BS. And today I'm actually just going to be answering some questions that I collected, some on LinkedIn, some on Facebook, regarding the life of freelancing. Some of these are sort of philosophical sort of questions. Others are just nitty gritty, like how do you do this, practical stuff. And so I'm not claiming to be any sort of amazing, super successful freelancer, but I have been doing it for about 4+ years. And so I'm just hoping that I can maybe share some knowledge and some wisdom, if you could call it that I've gained over the years. So let's just go ahead and get right into it. I got a list here of the questions that I've collected. So the first one is one of those practical, just sort of how do you do this kind of questions. Somebody asked, how do you handle bookkeeping and taxes appropriately? Where to start, who to talk to for help. So I'm probably not the best person to ask this question, but I can share with you what I do and what I recommend. So what I do is I do all my own taxes, and what I recommend is that you not do that. You probably should find somebody who can help you with your taxes at the end of the year. Preferably somebody who has worked with freelancers before. So, don't just go out and find any old random CNA or whatever. Find somebody who maybe specializes in freelancers, if there is such a thing, at least somebody who has some experience with handling the taxes of some freelancers. As far as bookkeeping goes, with any business, you really need to be tracking your expenses and the money coming in. And so I do that with something called Zoho Invoice. I also use it for sending invoices. So with Zoho Invoice, it's free actually also, by the way. It used to cost some money, but for some reason they recently decided to make Zoho Invoice free. And I use it to track expenses. So whenever I purchase something business related, whether it's a physical product or something online, I'll go in, I'll create the expense, and I'll say how much it was. I can upload a picture of the receipt, which has so far not ever needed to be used. But if you ever get audited, it's probably a good idea to have receipts. That's why some people, keep them in a shoebox all year. Well, if you use something like Zoho Invoice, you don't have to keep all your receipts in a shoebox. You just take a picture of it and then upload it to Zoho Invoice, and then you can throw the receipt away. And then you also choose a category. So, some expenses are marketing expenses, some are utilities, things like that. And I use TaxAct to do my taxes at the end of the year. And when you're doing your taxes with TaxAct, it asks you for your expenses, and then it asks you for your expenses in various categories. And I basically just try to match my categories in Zoho with the categories that TaxAct asks me for at the end. There's advertising expenses, office supplies, utilities, things like that. And so keep track of all that. When you use something like Zoho, it's pretty easy. You just keep track of it as you go. Whenever you buy something, you take a second to, I do a lot of it on my phone. You can do it on the computer, add that expense. And then at the end of the year, it's as easy as just clicking a few buttons to get a report. And the report will show you all your expenses, and you can divide it up by category when it comes time to do your taxes, or you can just send that report on to your tax person. And then, of course, you can also use Zoho Invoice to keep track of the money coming in. When you create an actual invoice and you send the invoice to somebody, and then they pay you, you can mark that invoice as paid, and then that automatically goes into your receivables in Zoho. And then you can also add other receivables if you brought money in and there wasn't an invoice involved, you can add that in Zoho Invoice as well. So yeah, I recommend using something like Zoho Invoice or FreshBooks. I used to use that. QuickBooks is probably a little bit overkill for the average freelancer, but I know a lot of people use that. There's a plethora of invoicing apps out there. I personally recommend Zoho because I know it works. I've been using it for the past 3 or 4 years, and it's free now. So that's cool. If you don't like it, no harm, no foul. You didn't have to spend any money on it. So hopefully that's helpful. Again, I recommend probably, and I'm probably going to do this soon. I'm probably going to find someone to help me with my taxes at the end of the year. When you freelance, I believe you're also supposed to do your taxes every quarter. I haven't been doing that. I've just been doing it at the end of the year. So again, if you can, I highly recommend you just find somebody who knows what they're doing, and then use something like Zoho to keep track of all your expenses and your receivables and everything like that, and then just send those reports off to the professional. That's my advice. The next question, this is kind of a longer one. The question is, they say I have the basics. Social media website is 75% done. But other than that, they say they have no idea the next steps as far as local outreach that would fit their life. And when they say life, they mean they're saying they're not super extrovertish. So walking into businesses and handing out cards seems very daunting to this person. They describe themselves as an introverted, exhausted father, but they also know that they need to do something to get their name out there. And so this, I've seen this talked about a lot. There are various aspects of business ownership that just come easier to some people than others. And networking and getting yourself out there is difficult for everybody, I think, particularly for introverts who just aren't super excited about going into a big room full of strangers all the time. What I will say about that is, first of all, I believe networking is very important, but you do need to understand that networking is a long game. Don't go to networking events thinking I'm going to get some business today. People will, you'll come off as needy and salesy and annoying. Just go to networking events with one goal in mind: to build relationships. Whether or not those relationships turn out to be, lucrative as far as your business goes, who knows? But you'll find yourself just enjoying it. Even if you aren't going in and coming out with clients, you'll find yourself enjoying building those relationships, making connections. And you'll be surprised later on when suddenly you find yourself making a sale, getting a client, and you'll realize that came from, 2 years worth of networking. Somebody you met years ago and have gotten to know over the years, and then finally, they need something that you offer. Boom, there you go. And so this has happened to me several times. I've never walked into a networking event and then come out with a client. That never happens. It's always a long game. And so if you are introvertish like this person, I would say, force yourself to do it. And I can promise you that it will get easier. One thing I know about introverts is, they're not super crazy about being in a room full of strangers, but the more you go to these various networking events in your local area, these people they're not strangers anymore. They become, maybe not great friends, but they're at least acquaintances or people that when you see them, you smile, you say, hey, how's it going? It becomes easier. It's definitely less awkward the more you do it. I understand that at first it can be very daunting. And even if you do know a lot of people there, I understand that the introverts just aren't super crazy about crowds, at all, even if they know people there. But it does get easier. Whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, it's awkward at first, and it gets easier the more you do it, and the more people you get to know. You just become more comfortable being in this environment. And your own boundaries. I'm not saying that if there's a 4-hour networking event that you have to show up the minute it starts and you have to stay until it ends. Making an appearance frequently can go a long way, even if you're only there for a little bit of time. People see your face. You can introduce yourself again. They know your name. They know what you do. You don't have to stay there for the entire time, all the time, and exhaust yourself. Just make an appearance, get to know some people, and continue those relationships on Facebook or LinkedIn, where it's a little bit easier for folks to socialize. You know, you can meet people in person, and you can continue those relationships online if that helps. But I do think that networking is just very important. I've never just gone into a business and handed out a business card either. Even as an extrovert, I find that to be awkward and weird. I know that there are people who do it. I don't like cold calling. I don't just buy lists of businesses and just start calling phone numbers. I don't do that either. I get most of my business from SEO, from my website, and then from networking. So I highly recommend it. I can't recommend networking enough, but I do understand that it is hard for some people. Just don't overdo it. Don't overwork yourself. Like I said, if there's a 4-hour networking event and you show up for an hour, that's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that at all. To show up, have a drink, mingle a little bit, and then get out. So the next question is, this is a funny one. as this came from a friend of mine. He said, "Why do you keep doing that to yourself?" Um, and this is related to another question that another friend of mine asked, who said, "What is your favorite part of freelancing?" So, what's my favorite part of freelancing? Why do I keep doing this to myself? Um, I think my favorite part of freelancing is just meeting a lot of people, um, whether it's new clients or other freelancers. It's been really fun getting to know other freelancers and collaborating with them on projects. I am not a designer and I'm not a copywriter. I'm not a videographer. So when I need to provide those services for my clients, I hire, professionals to do those things for me. And so that's really fun. Just for me, it's fun to get to know those people and to collaborate. I also do enjoy the freedom of it, and that's probably why I got into it and why I continue doing it. My lifestyle sort of requires that I have a very um, open schedule, so to speak. I need flexibility. I can't be just going to an office from 9 to 5 every day. Um, and so freelancing, gives me that option to work basically whenever I want. Um, it does come with the drawback. I am the kind of person who I can be lazy, and if I don't have somebody, you know, sort of over my shoulder, sometimes I can find myself getting distracted. I got the Xbox right over there that it's just, it calls to me. It really does. And so that can be hard. So you need to find ways to make sure that you can focus and get work done when you're freelancing. Sometimes too much freedom can be a bad thing, but that's probably the biggest reason. I've had a lot of jobs in my life, and I just felt like none of them, I didn't really click with any of them. A job needs to pay well, you need to be good at it, and you need to enjoy it. And it's really hard to find a job that meets all three of those criteria. I've had jobs that paid good, but I didn't like. I've had jobs that I was pretty good at, but didn't pay very well. And so it just, it's really hard to just find, for me anyways, it was really hard to find that job that sort of met all three of those requirements. So I thought, you know what, maybe I just need to work for myself. And so I started doing that, and it's been a blast. um, Next question: how do you find the overlap between what you enjoy doing, what you can charge for, and how many people will buy it in your accessible market? Yeah, that's a good question. I've found over the past 4 years that a lot of the work that I've been doing, I don't really enjoy it a whole lot, which some of you are like, what? I'm not crazy about web development. It's just a thing that I can do. And when I started thinking that I should try to work for myself and start my own business, it was kind of like, well, I can build websites. Let's make a business out of that. And so, what I've recently, over the course of the last year, I've actually been pivoting away from just doing web development and getting more into brand development and brand strategy, which I just find to be much more interesting. Web design is like a small part of that process, but it's a much more broad and much more interesting field to be in. I also am not super crazy about um, some of the competition in the web development market. You got things like Upwork and Fiverr, people doing work for peanuts. And then you got these DIY solutions like Wix and stuff that are just getting better and better. It's getting harder to charge a livable wage to do these things when people are thinking, well, I'll just go to Wix and do it myself. um, and so I'm really not sure what the web development market is going to look like 10 years from now, and I don't think I want to be in it. So that's why I'm moving more towards the broader brand strategy, brand development, um, because I really enjoy doing that. I did one not too long ago for a girl named Angie. She was calling her business CR Guitar Girl, and she wanted to rebrand, and she was going to call her business Cedar Rhapsody School of Music. Really clever name. I wish I could say that I helped her come up with that. I did not. That was all her. But that was just a really fun project. Yeah, we built her a website, but we designed her a logo. We designed a custom website layout, business cards. She's got a really cool new sign out in front of her business. It's just really cool to walk by and be like, hey, my guy Devin did that. And so it was just a really fun project, and I want to do more stuff like that. The challenge, as you brought up in your question, is finding people who can and will pay for that. And that's probably the challenge that every freelancer has, finding people who are willing to pay you uh, what you think you're worth can be challenging. And, you know, everybody will tell you, well, you got to be really good at saying no. And I agree with that, but I do also understand that that can be hard. And there's times where you just can't say no. I get it. You need money. But you should be trying to say no as much as you can when it doesn't feel right. If you get a job that you're just not super into, you don't really want to do it, don't do it if you can afford not to. And then the other thing is if you have, a niche, which is highly, recommended, that doesn't mean that you can't do work outside of that niche. But one thing that I see a lot of people do, particularly designers, is they will include everything they've ever done in their portfolio. And I think that's a bad idea. I think your portfolio should include your best work and work that you want to do. If you took a job that you weren't crazy about, but you took it because you needed the money, maybe don't put that one in your profile because you don't want people to see that and think, ooh, that's what I want. Now you're just getting more jobs you don't want to do. So your portfolio should show people the kind of work that you enjoy doing and that you're really good at. And I'm in the process still of rebranding myself, and that's going to be my goal with my portfolio. I've built a lot of websites and done a lot of things over the years, but my portfolio is going to be pretty small. So next question, any advice on how to make your processes efficient enough to avoid exhaustion without spending more than you can make? Yeah, that would be a better question for Devin, my friend Devin. He's my go-to designer. He's very good about time management and coming up with processes. I am horrible at this. This is also kind of a broad question. How to make your processes efficient enough to avoid exhaustion without spending more than you can make. Yeah. I don't know. I like the idea of trying to find, if you're looking for a project management software, if you can find one that's free or very inexpensive that does what you need, then yeah, knock yourself out. But I would caution you against always trying to find the free or cheapest option, because a lot of times those aren't going to make your process efficient. A lot of times, if you really want something that's going to make your workflow better, you're going to have to pay for it. And there's a balance there. Like you said, you can't be spending more than you're making, obviously. But I always try to be frugal whenever I can, so that sometimes I can splurge on something that, might be a little pricey, but just really makes my life easier. And so, one example is I talked about Zoho Invoice. I really do believe that that's a great product and it's free. So I would highly recommend you check out Zoho Invoice. But I'm not saying that you should try to always find free apps. It's not likely that you'll be able to find a free app for everything that you need to do. But just try to be smart about it. Keep track of what you're spending. Keep track of what you're making. Obviously, you don't want to spend more than you're making, but don't always go for the cheapest option. Is my advice. Go for whatever's going to actually improve your workflow. Because if you can improve your workflow and be more efficient, that affords you more time to make more money. That can make up for the fact that you had to spend a little bit on that particular software. Next question, referrals are the best source for finding more clients. I agree. How do you get and keep that ball rolling starting from zero? Yeah, referrals are amazing because referrals are basically somebody else doing sales work for you for free. Usually you have to pay for that. You have to pay somebody to do sales for you, either a salary or a commission or both. But a referral is somebody saying, yeah, that guy did something for me and it was really great. And I recommend that you go pay him to do it for you too. And so you automatically have some credibility there when you get a referral. So definitely agree that referrals are just the best kind of lead. But they're probably also one of the more difficult leads to get. You can get a bunch of crappy leads pretty easily by just running a Facebook ad or something, right? Get people seeing your ad and clicking on your website. You might not have a very high conversion rate, but those are leads, people coming in, and a lot of those leads might not be qualified, but it's not that hard to get those leads. Referrals is pretty hard to get because first of all, you have to be really good. And I really mean like really good. If you just do kind of what you were expected to do, you're probably not going to get a referral, right? I mean, how many people have eaten a cheeseburger and thought this is an adequate cheeseburger and then went out and started telling everybody to go eat it, right? Never. You're not going to go tell everybody to go eat this cheeseburger unless that cheeseburger was amazing and it exceeded your expectations. So first of all, you have to exceed people's expectations. If they're expecting you to do this, you have to do this, right? And then when you do that, then they're going to be more likely to want to tell people about you. But even if you do exceed their expectations, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to go out singing your praises. They also might not know anybody that needs your service. So it's a struggle to get referrals, and it can take time to get that ball rolling, especially as the question said, when you're starting from zero, you've done no work for anybody. Nobody knows how good you are. How do you get referrals? I mean, the answer really is just start doing work, do amazing work, and don't be afraid to ask for referrals. That's one thing that a lot of people are just afraid to do. Ask people for referrals. At least ask people to leave a review on Facebook or LinkedIn or wherever. If you know that they're happy with the work that you did, just ask them, hey, if you got a second, could you maybe leave a review on my LinkedIn and send them a link. Make it easy for them. Don't just say, hey, can you leave me a review on Google and then leave it at that. Send them a link. If you have a Google My Business page, which you should, you can go and log into your Google My Business page, and it provides you a link that you can just send to people. They click on the link, they click the 5 stars, boom, that's a 5-star review. So make it easy and ask for it. Ask people to leave your review and ask people for referrals. I mean, you can even be as direct as to say, do you know anybody who you think might benefit from what I just did for you? And see if you can actually get a name and a phone number out of them. And then, wait a few days. Hopefully that person will talk to that person before you call them out of the blue. But regardless, you got to ask for those referrals, because they are so good. They're the best kind of lead that you can get when they're already they probably haven't made up their mind yet, but they're already leaning towards you because someone they trust said that you're good at what you do. So it's so important to get those referrals. Referrals are also basically free, right? You're not paying Google ads or Facebook ads to get a referral. You're just doing a really good job and then asking for a referral. That doesn't require any money out of you, just maybe getting outside of your comfort zone a little bit. So definitely recommend doing that. Starting from zero, yeah, there's nothing you can do when you haven't done any work for anybody. No one's going to refer you to anyone. So just do some work. If you're just starting out, I won't ever tell you to go out and do free work, but I don't judge people like some other people will. If you take a couple jobs for free or really cheap to build your portfolio, that's fine. But don't advertise that you're doing that, and don't do it for very long. I mean, you can hop on Upwork, take a couple jobs, knock it out of the park, exceed expectations, and maybe get a couple referrals out of that, and at least have something for your portfolio. But don't get stuck in that I don't even know what to call it. Don't get stuck being the cheap one. You don't want to do so many jobs for cheap that you become known as the cheap person. You don't want people calling you and saying, hey, Rick told me that I could get a cheap website out of you. You don't want, just hang up. You don't want that phone call at all. So don't put yourself in that position. But there's nothing wrong with doing a couple jobs in the beginning at less than you would normally do it to get the ball rolling. And then I would just always recommend, and I think we'll talk about this. It's the next question, basically. The question is something I'm sure you'll like talking about. She knows me. If you started small and cheap, how do you effectively switch to a higher end brand and clients? The answer is just do it. Just raise your prices. Think about this. Every single time you do a job, you just gained experience that you didn't have before you did it, which means you are more expensive than you were before you took that job, right? You should always be raising your prices gradually at least, and maybe even leaps and bounds if it makes sense. When I first started, I've done websites for people for $500, and now my minimum is basically $5,000 for a basic website. And I didn't just one day wake up and start charging $5,000. It's been like this. I remember the first time I charged somebody $1,000 for a website. It felt so good. I remember $2,500 benchmark. I remember the $5,000 mark. It's I just sent out a proposal a couple weeks ago for $20,000. I haven't heard back yet, but cross my fingers. But it's been a gradual increase, but it's a steady increase. Like I said, I think you should pretty much be raising your prices just constantly, because you're constantly getting better at what you do. You're getting more experience. Hopefully you're learning stuff. You're on Udemy, you're on lynda.com, or I guess it's LinkedIn Learning now. You're on YouTube. You're learning new stuff to get better at what you do. And you're just gaining experience with every single client, every single job you do. You're gaining experience. And so you are therefore worth more than you were before you took that project. So I highly recommend just, it's okay to start small. Obviously, if you have no portfolio, you can't come out the gate and probably convince someone to pay you 10 grand for a website, right? I mean, who would pay someone $10,000 when they have no idea what kind of work they're going to get out of them, right? So you got to start somewhere. Just don't get stuck being the cheap person. Gradually increase your prices, consistently increase your prices. And I've even told clients, yeah, I'll do this for you. I think I can make this work for you on that budget. I normally wouldn't do it for this, this cheap. But I have I have an opening in my schedule, and it's better than doing nothing. Whatever you got to say, don't be afraid to just make it clear that I normally don't do it for this price. Don't advertise that I did this for this price. Because again, you don't want people going out and telling people, hey, call James because he's cheap. You definitely don't want that. So always just constantly find excuses to raise your price. If you need to justify it, go learn something. Go take a course on Udemy about graphic design, and then and talk about that on social media. Yeah, I'm taking this course and I learned something. Here's what I learned, whatever. And then raise your prices a little bit after that. If you have to do something to justify it, in your mind, do that. And a lot of people will also just raise their prices every year, and that's a good excuse to do it, especially if you have ongoing clients and you want to raise your prices, but you don't know how to bring that up with clients. End of the year is a great time to just send out an email that says, hey, just want to let you know my prices are going up this year. People expect that. People get raises every year to compensate for inflation. So why wouldn't a freelancer, raise their prices? The agencies are doing it. The big agencies, they're raising their prices every year, because they're giving their employees raises every year, and it's just how it works. So don't be afraid to raise your prices. I probably said raise your prices 30 times in this video already. I'll say it again: raise your prices. Don't ever stop. Charge what you're worth, but also make sure you're worth it. Like I said, never stop learning, never stop practicing, and getting better. So I think that was all the questions I had here. This has been interesting. I read these questions ahead of time, but I didn't prepare anything. I wanted to go a little bit off the cuff, so to speak. And I think that was kind of fun. If you have a question you would like me to answer regarding freelancing, please feel free to ask that question in the comments wherever you're watching this, whether it's on YouTube or LinkedIn. And I'll be more than happy to answer. And I also probably have some freelancer friends who will jump in and help me answer that, so you can get a few different perspectives. So thank you guys for watching. Thanks everybody who submitted a question, and I will catch you all later.